Welcome to Part 2 of Engage Students to Embrace Civility. This section is focusing on how to build a positive school climate and support all students in fostering positive relationships. I think it's important to start with a discussion of the ESSA evidence-based standards. There are 4 levels of what is considered evidence-based. Level 1 is strong evidence from a well-designed experimental study. My concern about this is frequently these studies are not culturally appropriate, and it takes maybe a decade to get this level. So by the time the study has documented strong evidence, all the research is really old. Moderate evidence is level 2, and the same concerns here. By the time you get to the point of an experimental study, it's a decade past the research. More effectively is the focus on promising evidence, where there's at least some research that suggests that the strategies are effective. And most appropriately, in my opinion, is the standard of research rationale. That the rationale for what you're doing is grounded in research insight with local evaluation. Now, there are some new approaches that have demonstrated promising evidence in the field of bullying prevention, but there is no comprehensive approach with documented evidence in this field. I strongly encourage that you read this article that was published by the Brookings Institute, From Evidence-Based Program to an Evidence-Based System. And in this article, the gentleman encourages the same approach that I have been following for a very long time, and that is the importance of putting together an approach that focuses on effectiveness at the local level and ongoing activities to ensure effectiveness. Level 4 of ESSA actually came from a provision in the former Safe and Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act. This act required an evidence-based approach, which was at that point in time level 1 and 2. But it did allow for innovative approaches if they had a likelihood of success. The requirements that were set forth for this program provide what I consider to be an excellent model for a continuous improvement process. They included a needs assessment based on objective data that describes the problems or concerns faced by the school, and a description of performance measure or measures that the program or activity that would address that is tied to the needs assessment. Second, a rationale for the program or activity. How is it designed? Why is it expected to be successful? A discussion of the most significant risk and protective factors that the program has been designed to target, a detailed description of the implementation plan, including a description of how each program or activity will be carried out, personnel, audience, and the time frame, a detailed description of all costs, and an evaluation plan, the methods that are going to be used to assess progress toward attaining the goals and objectives, how the evaluation will be conducted, how they will be used to refine and improve and strengthen the program, and how they will be reported. Lastly, evidence to support that the program or activity has a substantial likelihood of success, which includes a description of the prevention resource and principles upon which the program has been based, a description of results in other settings if that has accomplished, or if the program has not yet been rigorously evaluated, the plan and timetable for doing so, which was the prior requirement. Now, since the development of the Safe and Drug-Free Schools provision, I've paid a lot of attention to evidence-based programs, and too many programs that have been deemed to be effective in one setting may not be effective in other settings with different cultures and climates, especially serving minority students. There have been, in my opinion, too many programs that have been validated as effective on majority class students. So I think that there needs to be one additional component to establish a likelihood of success, and that is evidence to support the fact that the proposed approach has been developed with an equity lens that fits with the culture of the specific school community and will meet the needs of students with greater challenges within this specific school community. And evidence that the plan has been developed by a team that includes members of minority communities and in consultation with other professionals within that community. Based on the premise that there needs to be a research basis for the rationale for the activities that are going to be taken, this is how I framed my very extensive research. What aspects of the environment need to be better addressed? How can we empower those who are more frequently bullied to reduce the potential that others will treat them badly and improve their response if and when this occurs? How can we influence those who are hurtful to stop being hurtful and accept personal responsibility and remedy the harm if they were? How can we empower and encourage witnesses to step in and help? And how can we improve the effectiveness of staff and school leaders in responding to hurtful incidents and situations? This is a brief presentation of the research insight that I consider to be promising, either promising insight or promising practices that has been integrated into the approach that I am recommending. So first, promising insight related to the environment. We know from research that schools that function in a more democratic manner have lower rates of hurtful behavior, and that increasing student voice can help to shift schools to function in a more democratic environment. Also, it appears very important to look into the perspectives and norms of the school's athletic programs to ensure that they're not maintaining a toxic masculinity perspective, because that's going to really contribute to hurtful behavior. Additional promising research insight related to the environment is that a student leadership strengths resilience approach is imperative and will be effective. Further, when we're talking about positive relationships between students, students are far more likely to listen to other students than they will to listen to adults. Also, a use of a local social norms survey can be highly influential, and this survey can also include questions to assess progress. Remember, we need to focus on evaluation. Social norms approach has been used very effectively to address binge drinking at the college level, and there's other research that really focuses on the effectiveness of communicating to a community what the norms of that community are. Students are going to be strongly influenced by the data from their school that demonstrates what they think about how they treat each other, and they are going to be really attentive when students who are respected within the school are the ones who are communicating this data to them. Also, there's been some great work around addressing dating violence that finds that informal messaging about norms and skills can be an effective strategy. So we don't have to directly teach students all of the issues or all of the skills that they need to learn. How can we address the concerns of those students who are being more typically targeted? How can we empower them? Because this is a power dynamics issue. We know from the research that students who have greater levels of resilience will both be less likely to be targeted and more likely to respond effectively. So we have to increase student resilience. How do we do that? Using trauma-informed practices and positive psychology insight to support students in gaining greater resilience. And I have identified 7 key practices that I call the Be Positively Powerful strategies. Those include positive connections with adults and peers, acts of kindness, a focus on strengths, gratitude, mindfulness and self-regulation, presence, and problem solving. Targets also need insight into effective skills to reduce the potential of someone being hurtful to them and into how to effectively respond. We should know by now that punishing students doesn't change their behavior. We have to figure out how to get students who are being hurtful to stop being hurtful, accept personal responsibility for the harm that they cause, and take steps to remedy that harm and cease from being hurtful in the future. So the insight in the 2 kinds of business leaders, dominance or teamwork or prestige leaders, I think is really helpful, and there's more insight into the fact that we can shift how those who want to achieve leadership might work. So that can be very helpful. I've also noted that Bandura's mechanisms of moral disengagement are frequently used to rationalize harm. There'll be more on that in this presentation. It's possible to use concepts from what's called the psychology of influence. This comes from the marketing literature, and positive social norms to influence the behavior of these hurtful students. It's very important that we use restorative practices, but the current approach, in my opinion, is not working. This process needs to be expanded, especially to incorporate moral disengagement, psychology of influence, and positive social norms, as well as collaborative problem solving and multiple tier system of support. So we've got to be doing more within this restorative practices component. We have to, in the process, identify and address the concerns of students with challenges. Now, these are likely students who have also been bullied, so we have to combine the approaches for students who have been bullied and those who are now being hurtful. And we need to address the concerns of impulsive retaliation. And there is research that indicates that if we focus on self-regulation, personal power, growth mindset, and problem solving, we should be able to accomplish this. I should note that I'm going to be going into a lot of this in more detail, and this is the overview to introduce you to what I was researching. So, how do we influence witnesses to intervene? This requires addressing 3 kinds of issues. First is personal factors of motivation, whether or not they have compassion, feelings of personal power. Here we've got that power issue again, and feelings of self-efficacy, the skills. There are social factors which relate to friendships, school climate, and the social norms of the school. Here we have social norms again. And there are also barriers, which include rationalizations, the Bandura's mechanisms of moral disengagement, diffusion of responsibility, fear of embarrassment, and not sure whether peers will support their action. Again, social norms. We need to focus on positive social norms, stepping in to help, and teach students effective skills, especially private skills that are safer. And lastly, how can we improve intervention? So it's my perspective that the civil rights regulations set forth the framework for more effective intervention. This requires a prompt, comprehensive investigation focused on whether a hostile environment exists, not on whether a student violated policy, and then steps taken that are reasonably calculated to stop the harassment, which means more than punishment, remedy to the harm to the target, which includes both academic and social, and correct the hostile environment, which is really important. Minor incidents must be fully investigated to determine whether or not this really is a minor incident or is a persistent or pervasive hurtful situation. And it is my opinion that state statutes and the actions of the National School Board Association in undermining the civil rights laws present a huge concern, and we're going to have to deal with that concern. So, where is all this extensive research that provides support for the insight delivered in this presentation? It's in my book. My book is 3 years old, and so some of the insight and information in this presentation has come more recently, but almost all of it is in Engage Students to Embrace Civility. It is essential to start with a continuous improvement approach. There needs to be a leadership team that has staff, students, and parents, and this team must be diverse. It is important to have an annual survey that is effectively analyzed, as well as focus group insight. There must be improvement objectives that are tied to the data. What are you intending to improve, and how are you going to measure it? Strategies informed by the research, and that includes all of the safe and drug-free school, likelihood of success approach to the strategies, and a plan for evaluation of effectiveness, which is essentially circling right back into that annual survey data analyzed. This has to be an ongoing process within the school. So I am admittedly a data Grinch. We've got to focus what we're doing on data. Regularly obtain data, and that includes through annual survey or surveys and focus groups, especially that include the marginalized targeted students. Then use that data for needs assessment to develop objectives and identify strategies and to evaluate effectiveness. And to evaluate the data, look at correlations between the data points and look at the data longitudinally to assess change. There's a theory that I came upon that I found exceptionally helpful in setting a framework for what needs to be done, and this is called the self-determination theory. Daniel Pink addressed this theory in a book he wrote, Drive, something that whatever it is that motivates us. He's not the creator of this theory. He was reporting on what the research has documented about this theory. So you can see more about this, do a search on self-determination theory online. Under this theory, there are 3 primary motivators for behavior. One is connections. That is the positive connections we have with important others. The second is competencies, effective skills in areas of perceived importance. And the last one is control, personal autonomy and choice. And especially with teenagers, the issue of personal control is highly important because of where they are developmentally. So in the next slides, I'm setting forth a lot of individual strategies. Some of them are essentially huge components in and of themselves. Many of these components are what I consider essential if you're implementing trauma-informed practices or maintaining a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are several that are critically important to fostering positive relations and go beyond what may be encouraged in trauma-informed practices and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I marked them with a green star. And some of these are components of what I now call the Be Positively Powerful resilience strategies. You'll see that they are within all 3 sections of the self-determination theory 3 components. But they are the ones that I think are most significantly important to foster resilience and empowerment, especially of young people who are being treated badly. So this is a list of all of the kinds of activities that can be incorporated into a comprehensive strategy to foster positive relationships. So this includes Under connections, positive adult connections. This is part of Be Positively Powerful. Community circles, cultural inclusion, positive acknowledgments of positive behavior, kindness, gratitude, and friendships, which are all also part of Be Positively Powerful, and shifting from an authoritarian environment to a more engaged, democratic environment, shifting from competition in athletics to more of a teamwork focus, shared values and commitments, and an accountability process. Under competencies, we've got social emotional learning and a growth mindset. Those are kind of foundational and huge issues. Mindfulness and de-escalation, focus on strength, problem-solving skills, goal setting and action planning, which are all part of Be Positively Powerful, and a significant focus on skills that students can gain to foster positive relationships. Under control, we need to ensure authentic student voice, have engaged student leaders, focus on influencing and supporting positive peer intervention, and helping young people retain their personal power, especially in situations when somebody might be treating them in a hurtful manner. So, under connections, engage in relationship mapping to ensure every student has one or more staff allies. Establish ongoing community circles to support the quality of community. Ensure school is culturally inclusive and address implicit bias. Engage students and staff in making positive acknowledgments. Engage in school-wide initiatives supporting kindness, gratitude, and friendships. Shift from an authoritarian paradigm to an engagement paradigm. Ensure your athletic program focuses primarily on teamwork over hostile masculinity competition. Create a statement of shared values and personal commitments, and support accountability for any wrongdoing with an obligation to remedy the harm. The importance of positive staff-student connections cannot be understated. This comes from Making Caring Common from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. There may be nothing more important in a child's life than a positive and stable relationship with a caring adult. For students, a positive connection with at least one school adult, whether a teacher, counselor, sports coach, or other school staff member, can have tremendous benefits in reducing bullying, lowering dropout rates, and improved social emotional competencies. Making Caring Common has a very helpful relationship mapping strategy that schools can use to identify and make sure that every student has at least one positive relationship with a caring adult who is paying attention to their concerns. Holding weekly or even daily community circles to build community and connections within classrooms and advisories is exceptionally important. Hold these community circles in any other environment where group issues need to be discussed, but not individual hurtful situations. The school community must know how to gather together to talk about how their community is functioning. Setting forth a commitment to be culturally inclusive and address implicit bias is obviously of significant importance and is a very challenging undertaking at this point in time. But schools must have an equity lens and focus on being culturally inclusive. Kindness. Being kind to others is teachable and it's contagious. The whole idea of practicing random acts of kindness, and this is a great website with lots of ideas for how schools can increase kindness. So we need to encourage students and staff to increase acts of kindness. It's important to recognize that consistently being kind can increase peer acceptance. So if a student is being treated badly, one of the best things they can do is consistently reach out to be kind to others every single day, 5-10 times a day. Gratitude. helps people feel more positive emotions, improves health, deals with adversity, helps build strong relationships, and can actually rewire the brain to achieve greater happiness. So encourage an attitude of gratitude within your school. This can, if a student can learn to focus on gratitude and on the good things that are happening, this can actually reduce the potential that they're going to be treated badly and support their recovery if they are treated badly. Friendships are exceptionally important. Students who are bullied often do not have good friends and are excluded from social circles. Having just one supportive friend reduces the harmful impact of being treated badly. Students who are bullied likely would benefit from support in knowing how to gain better friends. The best friendship strategy is to seek a friend who is at a similar level of social status with whom you share specific interests, so students can be supported in doing this. It's helpful if schools shift away from this focus on token rewards to a consistent focus on positive acknowledgments of positive behavior and appreciation. And this is not a token reward. Encourage both staff and students to provide written "great job" or "thank you" notes, and ensure that staff have identified students who have greater challenges and that they are receiving an equivalent or even higher level of positive acknowledgments. The research on this is really clear. Schools that function in an authoritarian manner have higher levels of violence and bullying because the school is modeling dominance behavior. So it's imperative to shift from authoritarian paradigm, adult control thinking, to an engagement, democratic-based paradigm within the school climate. It's important to consider the philosophy and practices of your school's athletic program. Does your athletic program foster attitudes of toxic masculinity? Toxic masculinity has been defined as a constellation of socially regressive masculine traits that serve to foster domination, devaluation of women, homophobia, and wanton violence. Well, that's somebody else's definition, but it looked like a pretty good one. So, does your athletic program place its highest priority on competition and dominance, or on teamwork and building skills together? Insist that your athletic program support kindness, respect, and inclusion. I think the concepts of shared values and personal commitments can be very helpful within the school environment. So collaboratively engage students in the creation of a statement of shared values of inclusion for the school. The Be Positively Powerful survey that's part of the Be Positively Powerful program asks students to provide the words that they would use to express what they desire to be the shared values of inclusion. You could use other methods to come up with this statement of shared values. Now, it's exceptionally important that students feel that they have been engaged in the creation of this statement. Then have each student and staff member create a statement of personal commitments, a written statement, a commitment of how they will treat others and how they will respond in hurtful situations. These personal commitments can be reviewed in community circles and will be exceptionally helpful if a student has engaged in wrongdoing and needs to be reminded of their statement of what commitments they were going to make to engage in kind and respectful behavior. This statement of personal commitments is incredibly important, especially to be able to have a copy of, and to use in any intervention with a student or staff member who has been hurtful. I commit to treat other members of my school community in this way. In my actions with others, I will. If I see someone being hurtful, I will. If I make a mistake and am hurtful to someone, I will. If someone is hurtful to me, I will. Make a copy. Maintain a file for use of these in interventions when a student or staff member has not followed their expressed commitments. So part of shared values is that anyone who's been hurtful should be accountable for accepting personal responsibility and taking steps to remedy the harm. I strongly encourage the integration of collaborative problem solving into the accountability process for students who have engaged in wrongdoing. Now, I go through this lots more in part 3 of the video. We have to identify the challenges of that student. That's part of the collaborative problem solving, but then collaborate with the student in solving problems to identify strategies to address the challenges, including the fact that they need to remedy the harm to someone who they have hurt. So restorative practices and restorative thinking is very important, but the restorative practices, the strict approaches of restorative circles and restorative conferences are not actually really effective. The research basis in this area is excellent, but it requires, the research came from the tribal indigenous communities in New Zealand and Australia. And a strong part of the social norms of those communities is their focus on the obligations all individuals have to the community, not a focus on individual rights. So this is one of the underlying differences that I believe is causing challenges with the implementation of these processes in this country. It's really important not to use restorative circles to address any individual concerns or to use any kind of a mediation approach when there's an imbalance of power in a hurtful situation. There also has to be a process to ensure accountability for staff if they engage in hurtful behavior or fail to intervene when they witness students who are being hurtful. So this is going to be addressed in part 3, and it's recommended that schools use a process for ensuring accountability for staff that is similar to how students' concerns are addressed. That requires an acknowledgement of harm, acceptance of personal responsibility, a remedy of harm in the form of a sincere apology, and discussion with the targeted student. But more on this in part 3. Under competencies, we need to implement a comprehensive program to address social emotional competencies and encourage a growth mindset. Implement school-wide and classroom mindfulness and de-escalation practices. Mindfulness and de-escalation or self-regulation are part of Be Positively Powerful. Focus on student strengths and embrace problem-solving strategies and practices and assist students in goal setting and action planning. These are all also part of Be Positively Powerful. And teach students how to handle hurtful situations, whether they are a witness, the one who's being treated badly, or the one who has been hurtful. I think this is a really, really important statement by the National Commission on Social, Emotional, and Academic Development. This commission was launched to advance a new vision for what constitutes the success for schools and our students. The commission began our work by listening to students who shared their thoughts about how they learn best. The young people were clear and unequivocal. They want positive relationships with educators and peers who enhance their sense of belonging in the school community. They want to know that the adults in their schools trust them and care about them, and they want to have meaningful choices and opportunities to make their goals a reality. Social and emotional learning is, of course, incredibly important, and CASEL is the source of insight on how to accomplish this. Maintaining a growth mindset is an important foundation to all of these activities. The natural tendency of people, if they're in a situation where hurtful behavior is going on, is to overreact and lose control. And the only way to reduce the potential of that occurring is to increase mindfulness practices. So mindfulness practices can help students achieve greater focus and self-regulation. It's imperative that schools have a daily practice and focus on helping students achieve mindfulness. Hand in hand with the mindfulness practices are increasing student skills in self-regulation and also establishing calming places within the school where they can go if they are upset. Now, this is a curve that describes the degrees of stress. When you're doing fine and then you get triggered and then that goes to an outburst and then there is a recovery period. What we've got to do is flatten the curve, okay? So one critical importance with that is that educators have to avoid tacos. If a student is becoming upset, that has triggered, and a staff member responds by threatening, arguing, challenging, ordering, or shaming, that student is likely to go on to an outburst. We need to get rid of tacos. Our approach in this area has to be strengths-based. I really like the work of the VIA Institute on Character. They've identified 24 character strengths that underline positive society. Now, everyone has different strengths in different amounts, and VIA Institute actually has a survey to identify personal strengths. I have a brief survey that they gave me permission to create also that I provide to schools. Schools could actually build an effective social emotional learning program based on the strengths and the activities to support those strengths that are on the viacharacter.org website. Problem solving is so incredibly important. We are all problem solvers should be a universal theme in the school. All students and staff should have the skills to solve problems. Ensure they have an understanding of the situation and establish their goals. Identify possible strategies. Consider the possible consequences of those strategies. Weigh the pros and cons. Develop and implement an action plan and evaluate effectiveness. I like the work of Dr. Schur in I Can Problem Solve. Great program. Make sure that this problem-solving approach and problem-solving thinking, what's the problem? What's our objective? What are the strategies? What might happen? Which would be the best? How do we implement this and how do we evaluate the effectiveness? Is integrated into community circles, into the accountability process that's used to resolve incidents, and into the development of positive action plans for any student who has challenges. Maintain a consistent practice of staff asking students how they would solve a problem rather than enunciating an adult solution. So if a student comes and says, I'm having this problem, the staff response should not be, oh, well, I think you should do thus and such. It should be, well, let's discuss this. What exactly are you trying to accomplish? What strategies could you use? That's what we need to shift to. Research has also found that students who are focused on their future possibilities, where they want to go in the future, are more resilient. And so to do that requires a focus on goal setting. Simple process for goal setting. Set goals that are motivating because they're important and have value. Make sure goals are specific, relevant, and attainable in a specific time. Put goals in writing. Make sure your goal is measurable so it's clear when it's been attained. Problem solve to identify the action steps, put those action steps in a sequence, identify when the action step is accomplished, evaluate the effectiveness of the action step, and revise the action plan as necessary. So the last and extremely large component under competencies is focusing on skills to foster positive relationships. And there are a bunch of skills we've got to talk about. We need to shift from bullying prevention to thinking about how to foster kindness, respect, and inclusion. It's necessary to engage a diverse group of kind, respectful, inclusive students to serve as leaders. This is under the component of control, but I'm putting it in here because it's also really important for fostering positive relationships. We must emphasize positive social norms by using a survey data and positive student leaders to communicate those norms. We can use the psychology of influence to motivate positive behavior. We can help students learn to recognize when they're rationalizing being hurtful. We must reduce impulsive retaliation and increase student resilience and empowerment. And we need to increase student effectiveness in responding if they are treated badly, influence students not to be hurtful, and to accept personal accountability and responsibility to remedy the harm if they were, and lastly, increase positive peer intervention. So, how do we do this? So, we have to increase student skills to effectively and independently handle hurtful incidents, increase peer acceptance, and respond effectively if they're treated badly, stop themselves and make things right if they were hurtful, and step in to help if they witness a hurtful incident. Okay, we just need to shift our language to the positive. I'd rather actually not use bullying prevention ever again in my life, but shift away from stop bullying, bully-free zone, bully prevention, to a focus on kindness, inclusion, and respect, and all of the positive language. So identify a group of diverse leadership students who are consistently kind, respectful, and inclusive, and empower them to leadership roles to foster a kind, compassionate, inclusive school and online environment. Adults should shift to becoming guides by the side. The positive social norms theory is really, really helpful. Now, this theory basically goes that people often misperceive the attitudes and behaviors, the norms of others, and this then influences their own actions. If they think something's okay in the eyes of others, they are more likely to do this. When people learn about the actual positive norms of their peer group, they are more willing to abide by those norms. This theory has been used in an effective manner to reduce binge drinking and in the higher education environment. And there's a lot of other research on positive social norms in the business and marketing region. So, being hurtful in many communities is perceived to be an acceptable path to achieve social dominance. But the majority of students actually don't like to see this occur. The majority admire those who are kind and respectful and who step in to help. This is an actual study that was done. They conducted a social norms survey to clarify the values of the majority of students about how peers were being treated. They demonstrated this data to the students, and this influenced the students to act in accord with those values. This has demonstrated effectiveness in reducing bullying. This is promising evidence in the ESSA terms. There are a variety of ways that schools can focus on and enhance student understanding of the positive social norms of their peers. Have all students and staff participate in the activities of developing a statement of shared values and their own personal commitments, and reading their commitments to others. Conduct a survey that identifies students' actual norms and provides the data to students in instruction, presentations, and posters. And that's what the Be Positively Powerful program does. And use student leaders to make presentations to the students that discuss what the positive norms of their community are. In part 1, I introduced you to the Embrace Civility student survey that I did. I asked positive norm questions. I asked, what is your normal reaction if you see a student being hurtful to another? And, not so amazingly, 89% of students said they really don't like to see this happen. And some others said they don't care one way or the other. It happens all the time. Person probably deserved it. Look at what that data will say to students if you complete a survey with this question at your school. This was another question on the survey. What kinds of people do you admire? Blue is admire. Yellow is no opinion one way or the other. I would change that to mixed feelings at this point in time. And red is do not admire. Look at what the students say, at the kinds of students they admire. Those who are respectful and kind, reach out to help, tell someone being hurtful to stop, help someone who's being hurtful decide to stop and make things right, were treated badly and responded in a positive way, report serious concerns, were hurtful but stopped and made things right. Now, we've got some concerns on the were treated badly and retaliated issue because we got a lot of mixed feelings on that one. But they definitely do not like to see, or they do not admire those students who ignore hurtful situations involving others, laugh when they see somebody being treated badly, create hurtful drama to get attention, and think it's okay to be disrespectful to others. They don't like this. So if you show them, if your student leaders show the students their data that shows what they say they think about how people treat each other, they're going to listen. This is another social norms question. What words would you use to describe someone who steps in to help? Look at those words and think about what will go through a student's mind if they see a hurtful situation and are thinking about maybe stepping in if they know that this is how their peers will think of them. When I found this research, I thought it was exceptionally helpful. This is work by Siladani. It's in the marketing field, and it's the psychology of persuasion, influence. So there are 6 practices that are very helpful in influencing people's behavior. Now, their approach is influencing them in a marketing sense. My thinking is, how do we influence students to be kind and to accept personal responsibility if they are not kind? So the 6 practices are reciprocity. That's the golden rule. How would you feel if somebody did that to you? Another process is commitments. How does this fit with your personal commitments? So this ties with the practice of having a statement of shared values and personal commitments. Social proof. This is the social norms theory, also part of the research in this field. What would others think? Liking. We tend to follow and do what those who we like would do. So what would your friends think? Authority. We are very influenced by what the authority would say. What would your mom or dad think? Or what are our shared values? And scarcity or possible loss. How could this damage your reputation or get you into trouble? Another line of research that's really helpful in understanding how to strive to influence those who have been hurtful is the work of Bandura, who focused on mechanisms for moral disengagement. So to hold those who have been hurtful accountable requires that they accept personal responsibility for the harm that they have caused. Too often, people create rationalizations to excuse wrongful behavior. If you focus on these rationalizations, you can start to see them everywhere. There are four main ways that people rationalize hurtful behavior. One is they spin it. Reconstrue conduct is the scientific term, but it was just a joke. Locker room talk. Spin it. Or they may deny personal responsibility. Oh, somebody else started it. Or a principal may say, well, this really wasn't bullying, so there's nothing I can do. They may deny the harm. Oh, she's just overreacting. Or blame the other. He deserved it. If he would just stop doing that, this wouldn't happen to him. We also have to address the issues of impulsive retaliation. As I indicated in part one, this seems to be a significant factor in a lot of incidents of hurtful behavior. And retaliation is modeled by society. There are also mixed feelings of students, as we saw on the slide before, about whether or not retaliation is acceptable. There are, fortunately, 4 research-based strategies that can be used in combination to address this concern. So we can teach students these strategies. To avoid retaliation, step 1, self-regulate. I will make sure that I remain calm. Step 2, keep your personal power. I choose not to give anyone the power to control how I feel about myself or act. Step 3, growth mindset. I know that others can change and the situation can change. And step 4, problem-solving skills. I will think things through to decide what is best to do. How do I handle the fact that somebody has treated me badly without engaging in retaliation? The last component of the self-determination theory is control. And there are 4 components of this. We need to engage authentic student voice in all aspects of school climate initiatives. Identify a diverse group of kind, respectful, and inclusive students to serve in leadership capacity to foster a positive school climate. We're focusing on getting and engaging the prestige leaders, not the dominance leaders. Increase positive peer intervention, and help students gain strengths in retaining their personal power. There has been an increase focused on ensuring authentic student voice, regularly soliciting student feedback, engaging students in studying and assessing their school climates, including authentic student representation on leadership teams, inviting students to any discussion related to their own learning, and considering young people as stakeholders and partners in their school. It is imperative that schools establish a diverse team of the prestige leadership students to lead the efforts to foster kindness, respect, and inclusion. We also need to increase positive peer intervention, and this is included under control because this is placing students in charge of focusing on the quality of their environment and stepping in to do something if they witness something that is inappropriate. So we know that most bullying is socially motivated to attract attention, gain power. Targets have lower social status and are perceived as different, and many students think those who engage in bullying are cool, but they're not well liked. Most students do not like to see the bullying and feel sorry for the target. Many students would like to step in and help, and when students do help, they are often very effective, and the hurtful behavior stops. Also, we know that targets who have supportive friends are less distressed, but there is a gap between the expressed intent to help and actual action. More students express an intent to help than actually do help, and the Be Positively Powerful survey, which was the Embrace Civility survey, but it's got a new name, actually asks questions so that that discrepancy can be identified in the data. So what I tell students is that when they witness bullying or hurtful behavior, they have a choice. They can become a hurtful participant who joins in and supports the harm, a passive observer who ignores what's happening or walks away, or a helpful ally who steps in to help. And there are 3 things a helpful ally can do. One is to reach out, to be kind to the person who's being treated badly. The second is say stop, either publicly or privately. Tell the one who's being hurtful to stop. And number 3 is report serious concerns to an adult who can help. So I conducted a very extensive, full investigation of all of the research literature that functions in this area. And of the research has identified that the factors that support intervention are noting a hurtful situation, interpreting it correctly, having a feeling of personal responsibility, having sufficient personal power, and effective intervention skills, and being within a supportive social environment. What discourages intervention is diffusion of responsibility, thinking that someone else is responsible, audience inhibition, the fear of public embarrassment, and social influence. That is the perception that other people would not support the intervention, which is actually a mistaken understanding of the social norm. There appear to be 3 personal factors that can increase the potential for positive peer intervention. The first is motivation. Are you compassionate? Do you have a feeling of personal responsibility for the well-being of others? Do you accept differences? Do you have affective empathy, that is, or even compassion, that you care when somebody else is hurting? And do you have a personal connection with them? The second is personal power. If a witness is not as powerful as the aggressor, there are risks of embarrassment or retaliation. And if a witness becomes associated with a lower social status target, there is also a risk of embarrassment. If you have greater personal power, then these risks are less. And lastly, self-efficacy. This is effective skills plus confidence in those skills, which appears to be tied with the personal power issue. And if you have self-efficacy, we need to look at what skills might reduce the risks of embarrassment or retaliation. These are strategies to effectively address the personal factors issue. Use a local survey data to help students understand the actual peer norms of admiration for students who step in to help. Influence witnesses who have higher social status to be helpful allies by increasing their skills and motivation. Lower the social power barrier with the positive norms approach. That indicates that, peers actually accept. And that can help to both reduce the social power of aggressors and increase the social power of helpful allies. Teach students private strategies of how to reach out to be kind, or privately tell a student to stop, or privately report concerns to a trusted adult. And teach safer public strategies of intervening, such as working with others as a team. There are also social or environmental factors associated with a decision to step in and help. Friendships happen to be a factor. Friends of targets are likely to help their friend. Friends of aggressors are unfortunately more likely to support the aggression. Friends of both may help to mediate, or they may just stay out of it. And friends of neither, that's going to go back and depend on what the personal factors are. And another environmental factor is the perceived norms. We're back to social norms again. Students behave in accord with the perceived norms. When those norms discourage peer aggression and support positive peer intervention, the percentage of students who are willing to act in a positive manner and step in to help increases. Lastly, it's the school climate. Does the climate maintain a culture of acceptance of differences? Has the climate have full engagement with students? Are there any conflicts with student expectations? If you see a hurtful situation and you're late to class and you take the time to address that situation, are you going to receive a negative consequence because you were tardy? And the effectiveness of school interventions when the hurtful situations are reported to the school will affect the willingness of school to report serious concerns to the school. Lastly, under control, we need to focus on how to help students retain their personal power, their control. Now, the old concept in bullying, and which exists to this day, is that there is an imbalance of power between the student who's being hurtful and the one who's been targeted. Students who demonstrate that they do not feel they have any personal power are most often bullied. They look like victims and then they are victimized. And students who are hurtful, who engage in bullying, are seeking to take personal power from those who they are being hurtful to. So when a student overreacts, gets angry, or upset, that student's going to lose power points. So given that an imbalance of power is at the heart of bullying behavior, it's essential to assist typically targeted students to gain greater personal power and not respond to being treated badly in a manner that will undermine their personal power. There are two key strategies to accomplishing this. When students stand tall and walk with pride, this communicates that they have a sense of their personal power. And as Dr. Amy Cuddy from Harvard Business School has outlined in this great TED Talk that everybody needs to watch, your body language may shape who you are, and it's actually possible to fake it to make it. That is, intentionally standing tall and walking with pride can result in increased feelings of self-confidence. So we need to encourage all students to stand tall and walk with pride. Secondly, in keeping your personal power is controlling your thinking. And this is the rational emotive theory of Albert Ellis. The reality is we will never have the ability to control what might happen to us. If I am a student who is perceived as being different, then there are greater odds that somebody's going to treat me badly. And I can't control that. But I do have the ability to control how this makes me feel and how I respond. So the desired student response to being treated badly is that they take a deep breath, remain calm, stand tall, and then think to themselves, I'm not going to give you the power to control what I think about myself or respond. And at that point in time, they're going to keep their personal power. Now, the ABC is one way that the rational emotive theory has been expressed. A is the adversity that you cannot control. B is your belief that you can control. And C is the consequence or the result. So after I wrote my book, Engage Students to Embrace Civility, and developed a student program that supports students in the skills to reach out, say stop, report serious concerns, stop, own it, and fix it, and reduce the chance of their being treated badly, and increase their effectiveness in responding, which I called at the time Be Positively Powerful. And at the time of this recording, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to change that, but I came up with the 7 Be Positively Powerful strategies. And I have a book for teens and a book for younger students on these strategies. The 7 strategies are: make positive connections, reach out to be kind, use my strengths, focus on the good, be mindful, keep my personal power, and think things through. And as you can tell, I've already addressed a lot of the underlying research for these 7 strategies. This next section is an introduction to a student program that I have created. It was called Embrace Civility. The new title is Be Positively Powerful, Kindness, Respect, and Inclusion. And it has 3 components that I'll be describing to you. So first of all, I have 3 books. Be Positively Powerful, a guide for teens on achieving resilience and empowerment. And this sets forth the 7 Be Positively Powerful strategies, also talks about brain development, and then applies those strategies to interpersonal relationship issues. The second book is for younger students, Be Positively Powerful, Resilient When Things Get Tough, and this just focuses on those 7 strategies, and then I have a Spanish translation. In addition, I have developed a student empowerment and leadership program. This is grounded in the resilience strategies, incorporates positive social norms, engages students as leaders, and teaches effective skills. There are 3 components of this student program. First of all is the presentation and the grounding in the 7 Be Positively Powerful resilience and empowerment strategies. Second is the use of social norms survey and the sharing of the data with students by student leaders. And then third is the instruction in effective skills to prevent and respond to hurtful situations as the witness, the one being hurtful, or the one targeted. Now, the implementation strategy is to establish a diverse student leadership team, conduct the Be Positively Powerful student survey, present the positive social norms data, and use a combination of student leadership team members and teachers to impart insight into the effective skills. This instruction can be direct or can be provided through informal delivery through the form of announcements or posters. This section is the Be Positively Powerful, Resilient When Things Get Tough strategies. There's also a separate video in my trauma package that focuses more on the underlying research for each of these strategies. So, the 7 Be Positively Powerful strategies are: make positive connections. I make positive connections with good friends and trusted adults. Second, reach out to be kind. I reach out to be kind to others. Use my strengths. I use my personal strengths every day. I build new strengths. Focus on the good. I focus on the good things happening in my life. I am thankful. Be mindful. I sit quietly and become calm. If things get tough, I remind myself to remain calm. Keep my personal power. I stand tall and walk with pride. I do not allow what happens to control how I think about myself or respond. Think things through. I think things through to decide what to do. I create goals and plan my actions. This is how these strategies can be used to increase the resilience of students who are more frequently targeted. Now, this can be addressed through instruction, but this also can be addressed in creating a positive action plan, which is in the next video, part 3, how to intervene. Make positive connections with trusted adults and good friends. Reach out to be kind to increase peer acceptance. Use my strengths to feel proud and happy. Focus on the good to maintain happiness. Be mindful every day so I'm less likely to overreact. Keep my personal power by standing tall. And think things through to engage in goal setting as I plan for my future. To use these skills to increase effectiveness in responding when treated badly. First step, Be mindful and self-regulate to remain calm. Take a deep breath, stay calm. Keep my personal power by standing tall and controlling thinking. Think things through to safely get away from the situation. Then make a positive connection with a trusted adult or a friend to receive support and collaboratively think things through to determine what else they might do. And at this point in time, make sure they focus on the good and reach out to be kind to others to change the energies of how they are feeling. To influence those who have been hurtful to stop, own it, and fix it, and not be hurtful, accept responsibility if they were, increase their resilience and empowerment using those same positive strategies for kids who are typically targeted if they also have challenges. Increase their understanding of positive social norms of their school community. Ask them questions based on the psychology of influence. Help them recognize rationalizations as excuses for being hurtful. Reduce the likelihood for impulsive retaliation by using the 4 strategies that were outlined, and help them accept personal responsibility and think things through about how to remedy the harm. Strategies to step in to help if they witness hurtful situations. Reaching out to be kind by providing support to someone who's been treated badly, helping others resolve conflict, and helping a friend who's having a difficult time. Being mindful, keeping your personal power, thinking things through, and using your strengths when stepping into a situation to help someone who's currently being treated badly leave the situation, or when telling someone who's being hurtful to stop. Make a positive connection with a friend who's being hurtful to help their friend stop, own it, and fix it, and if their friend will not stop, walk away. And think things through to identify serious situations that need to be reported to an adult who can help. And being a leader. Become a leader in their community to support positive relations. Make positive connections with others who want to work for social justice and foster positive relationships. Consistently reach out to be kind and encourage others to do so also. Use their strengths individually or as part of a team to build positive community. Encourage their community to focus on the good as a way of increasing positive energies. Be mindfulness and keep their personal power when they are supporting others and making a demand for social justice, and working with others to think things through to determine the best ways they can proceed to achieve social justice and positive relations. This is part 2, what our data says about what we think. In this component of the program, information from the survey is shown to the students, either in an assembly or in classrooms, but preferably by student leaders who are showing this data. This is the kind of graphic that could be provided. The majority of students at this named school do not like to see their peers being hurtful. Data that shows who students admire and those who they don't admire, based on the kinds of actions that they would engage in, should be shared with students. Other data related to incidents and the times in which students say someone has been hurtful to them, and how that kind of goes against what the students say they like to see and what their shared values are. This kind of data can be shown to students. This is the section of Be Positively Powerful that focuses on fostering positive relationships. The 5 sections of this include reach out, say stop, report concerns, stop, own it, and fix it, and be positively powerful. Now, this was the first use of Be Positively Powerful, and I've now named the program Be Positively Powerful, so this last section may change, but I haven't been able to come up with a creative new name at this point in time. The key messages in this program include my choice. When I see somebody being hurtful, I can be a hurtful participant, passive observer, or a helpful ally. A helpful ally reaches out, says stop, or reports concerns. Reach out I will reach out to be kind to those who are treated badly or left behind. I will help others think things through or resolve conflict. Say stop. If it is safe, I will publicly tell someone being hurtful to stop. I will help someone who was hurtful stop, own it, and fix it. If it is a serious situation, I will tell an adult who can help. Stop, own it, and fix it. I will always remember that my choices show who I truly am. I will stop myself and make things right if I have been hurtful. Be positively powerful. If someone is hurtful, I will stand tall and respond in a positively powerful way. I will focus on the good and make a positive difference. This is a video by Embrace Civility. My websites are embracecivility.org, bepositivelypowerful.com.